Someone You Should Know. A program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sax, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sax.
Well, hello again, and welcome to another edition, another episode, if you will, of Someone You Should Know. Very, very glad to have you. This is going to be a special program today because you are going to meet someone that I regard as an American hero, and you will find out why. It's a couple of days after Memorial Day. I hope you all had a very meaningful holiday weekend, and I'm glad that you're joining us. And we are being brought to you today by our good friends at Ease Veterans Magazine. Christine Walker, who is the president, founder, the force behind At Ease Veterans Magazine, is a wonderful young lady. She has put together a magazine that is a coffee table type magazine. Comes out 4 times a year. Absolute beautiful publication. It is written by veterans and patriots. It is for veterans. It's about veterans. It is truly a one-of-a-kind, very unique publication. I urge you to check it out online and even subscribe to the magazine. I'm very proud to be on staff as one of the staff writers. And I thank you, Christine, for an absolutely incredible publication. I also want to give a shout out to Christine Dean, who is the force behind this show. She is also a sponsor and she is the producer of this show. And I'll make one more shout out, and that is to Cristie Remmel, who is the president of the DFW Veterans Chamber of Commerce. She is the person that introduced me to our guest today on the show, and I want to welcome to the show Ed Mireles. Ed, welcome.
Stuart, it's glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am so pleased that Cristie connected the two of us and said, you got to talk to this guy because he would make for a great guest on your show. And she is absolutely 100% right. I have read about you through your website and some other information. And honestly, I'm not saying this to embarrass you. I am saying it to pat you on the back, but I cannot thank you enough for all you have done, not only as a Marine, but also in the service of our country through the FBI and the various other things that you've been in. You are a true American hero, Ed.
Well, thank you, Stuart. That I'm really flattered, but when people use the H word, I get a little bit I don't know, squishy, I guess you'd say, but I don't consider myself a hero, but people use the word. Usually when people use the H word with me, they go, "Oh my God, he's so huge,"
Well, you don't have to be huge to be a hero, because sometimes you can be a real hero by flying under the radar, which I think it's safe to say you've done a few times during your career. And I think that by the time we get to the end of this show, the people that are watching and listening all over the country are going to see that that the people like yourself who have given service to our country and the things that you have done, the situations that you have been in, really truly are heroic and all. And even though you don't want to pat yourself on the back, the kudos are very much deserved, and I am totally in amazement. So I'm gonna really start by throwing the floor out to you to let everyone know a little bit about your career. It's a long list, folks, because Ed's been a lot of places and done a lot of things. But when did your career begin, and when did you decide to make law enforcement your career?
Wow, I have a long answer for that. I'll try to keep it short. Actually, just for the folks to know, I was born in South Texas. I'm from around the Corpus Christi area. So I what's that old saying? God bless Texas, because I love Texas. And when I was a young boy in Texas, I always wanted to be a police officer. I mean, I would see him around the city and the county and stuff like that. And I don't know what attracted me. I guess it must have been the uniform. But then when the Vietnam War started kicking off, I started seeing a lot of the older kids. I was in my well, I was under 10 and they were in their teens. They started leaving for Vietnam and stuff. And then as I got older, it was my turn. When I turned 18, it was my turn to serve. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps at that time, and it just reinforced the desire to serve, the desire to be a part of something greater than myself. So and then when I was in the Marine Corps, I was lucky enough to be assigned to the Marine Security Guard Battalion, which are basically, simply speaking, are embassy guards. And I was assigned to the embassy to the embassy in Bulgaria, and then subsequently to the embassy in Spain. And in the embassy in Spain, I met an FBI agent who he was what we call the illegal attaché. He was one of the embassy officers. And we struck up a friendship. And at that time, I finished up my tour, and I was studying in Madrid at the university there in Madrid. And he took me aside one time and said, "Hey, listen, have you?" What did he say? He said, "Hey, you're almost ready to graduate, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm about a year away." He said, "Have you ever considered a career in law enforcement?" I said, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I always wanted to be a police officer." And he said, "Well, have you ever considered, trying to apply for the FBI?" And I said, "Wow." I said, "I never had." Because I really didn't know anything about the FBI except that I'd heard somewhere along the way that you had to be a lawyer or an accountant. And I was neither. So I said, "Well, I don't have a chance to make it." So he said, No, that's not true. He said, we hire lawyers, accountants, engineers, linguists, scientists.
And Marines also.
And former Marines, former military folks. So he said, "Hey, I think you're a great candidate." He said, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write headquarters, because we were in Spain." He said, "I'm going to write headquarters in Washington, get an application for you. And when I get it, I'll hand it to you." And he said, "Review it and then answer the questions and so on." So he did that for me. And he said, "Hey," when he gave me the application a few weeks later, he said, "Hey, use me as a reference." So I said, "Wow, that's great." So I went through the process. It took about 18 months from start to finish. And I'll tell you, I was really lucky. And man, you have no idea how enthused I was. I was so happy, so grateful that I'd been selected to be an FBI agent. Here's a little skinny kid from some cow town in South Texas. He's an FBI agent. So that's basically pretty much how I got in. In 1979, and then after that, my career just kind of went around, whichever way world events took us or national events took us. So.
See, this is in the late 70s, so we are past Vietnam. The country is recovering. However, the work of the FBI is still extremely important at that period of time. You went to the FBI Academy in Washington, or was that in Quantico?
That was at Quantico. But by that time, the FBI had opened the academy at Quantico, Virginia. Up until 1972, the academy was at in downtown Washington, almost across the street from the current headquarters building. So I was probably 7 years after the academy opened. I was at Quantico. I'll tell you, Quantico was a great place. At the time, it was kind of a strange. You drove up through the woods at Quantico Marine Corps Base, and you're just driving. It looked like an old country road, because the military doesn't have a need to have highways. Just regular roads and stuff. And then you just come around a bend of all these green trees, and then there's this, it looked like like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz. There's this place with huge buildings and stuff right in the middle of the forest. And I'm thinking, holy moly! So I got to know that place pretty well. I mean, I spent 16 weeks there, and then subsequently, for 25 years, I kept going back for in-services. And then at a couple of times, I went back as an instructor for various courses. And it was pretty great. The Marines, thought it was pretty cool. But God, since that time, the academy area itself, we have, I think it's tripled in size. We've tripled so much down there that there's no more space. I mean, the Marines gifted us 500 acres. And I tell you what, I think we've used like 510 of those acres. We've kind of cheated onto the Marine side. So.
Well, am I correct that is now your home now?
Right. I retired out of Quantico, so I'm living in Stafford, which is about 5 miles from the academy.
So talk about kind of going full circle in your life. You started out in Quantico, and now you're retired and living in the Quantico area.
Yeah.
And you have done an awful lot in between. So when you graduated from the FBI Academy back in the late 70s and all, what was your first duty assignment? Where did you go?
I was assigned to the Washington field office. I was actually living in Northern Virginia. I was living in Arlington. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was assigned to the Washington field office because it saved money. I mean, there was no transfer issues there. I mean, because Arlington is just across the river from Washington. So
right.
I was assigned to Washington, and I was assigned to a bank robbery squad. And since it was four new agents and myself making 5, we were assigned to a bank robbery squad. So, being the new guys, we always got we didn't get the sexy cases. We always got the dirty work, the dog cases, so,
Yeah.
so, but it was work, it was good though, because it gave us an opportunity to try to learn the actual paperwork itself. When you're in an academy setting, you can look at paperwork, but it's all make-believe. Okay, so when you actually get into the field office, it's for real. Okay, it's real documents, real reports, and real leads and stuff like that. So it was very good because there was a learning curve involved there. So after about 2 years at WFO, I was selected to work an undercover operation in Miami, Florida. I left WFO for 2 years, and then after that I came back and went to a terrorism squad after that, So, and I was around. I'm getting out of sequence here. When I first got to WFO, was right at the time when the Iranian hostage situation was ending, had started. I'm sorry, because we were the FBI, State Department, Secret Service, marshals. I mean, every. Calling all cars, every federal and state agency converts on the Iranian embassy in Washington because President Reagan had determined or announced that the Iranians were persona non grata because they had our embassy staff as hostages, So right. We were kind enough to escort them around while when the president told them they had to leave. He gave them like 3 days to get out. So we escorted them around town, so nobody would attack them and stuff, and make sure that they weren't spying or planting bombs or whatever, whatever came into their mind. So we were kind enough to let them leave on a jet, whereas they held our hostages, and I could never. I can be a harsh man sometimes, I'm always, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, I'm thinking, hey, why don't we take their diplomats hostage? But that's why I'm not a diplomat. So anyway, getting back to when I came back from Miami, I was assigned to a terrorism squad, and by that time, the hostages had been released. So we were working counterterrorism cases, we had, which the majority of the cases were Middle Eastern cases. But, we had a lot of other cases, it was amazing. We had the Red Army from Italy. We had the Baader-Meinhof gang out of Germany. Again, another Red Army faction. And then we had some domestic terrorism also. People probably don't remember. We had the remnants of the Weather Underground we still were pursuing them, and then there was new people, a new batch of terrorism, the May 19th organization, and then it was the Puerto Rican terrorists, separatist terrorists, and then you had the Black Liberation Army. I mean, it's just everybody in the world, practically wants to be a terrorist. So we investigated a lot of cases during that time frame, and you know what though, and honestly, they still do. I mean, the beat goes on. Different year, different group.
Well, yeah, and as one group falls out of favor, there's usually another one waiting to take
Right.
their place and come up through the ranks. And so the FBI really is overseeing the investigation of a broad variety of not only domestic groups but also international groups,
Correct.
all at the same time.
Correct. Like, you know what? When I was a young agent, we had the Iranian threat. That they've been a threat to us since 1979. When they took the embassy over, we had the Iranian threat, and then we've had the Libyan Muammar Gaddafi, but at the time, there was no Hamas. Hamas is new. Al Qaeda is new. I worked against Al Qaeda, in my later years, but
yeah, the Taliban was another one.
Yeah, but like I said, different year, different group, so,
So, I mean, in your position working there, were you like just a phone call away from going to investigate something? I mean, or were you really put on a case that you worked diligently on for a period of time? Or were there times where all of a sudden you or your team would get a call and say, "Hey, whatever you're doing, stop. We need for you to go here and investigate"?
The answer to both of those questions is yes. There wasn't an explosion every day, so, but if there was an explosion, it was all hands on deck. Everything stops. Everybody focuses on the event, because time is of the essence. Witnesses and potential suspects and so on. They can escape, but after the dust settles, after everything quiets down, it just becomes a routine process. Of going through the evidence. Following leads, developing informants and stuff. So, like I said, there wasn't a bomb going off every day. It's not like the Middle East, so.
Right.
But we did have our share of incidents, and there were incidents that happened overseas, like if you had a hijacking, of an American airline in Lebanon or something like that, it would have repercussions in the U.S. So that would gear things up, So it was very interesting work at the time, which. I've been retired for a long time now. I'm sure it's still interesting, so especially with what's going on now with Hamas and all those different organizations.
Well, yeah, that's why I said earlier that when there's one crisis maybe that's in the process of being wrapped up, there's other crises that are growing,
Right.
either surfacing or just growing from their infancy. And I think the people that are watching and listening probably also should be aware of the fact that all of this investigating that you're doing, you alluded a little bit to the paperwork aspect of it. It was important for you to do all of that paperwork because you were establishing a paper trail that if these situations ended up in a court of law, they would need the testimony, the paperwork, the backup, the investigations from the FBI in order to help support and build their case. Am I correct?
Absolutely. See, that's one thing a lot of people, that's one thing that you don't get from movies, or TV shows. In a TV show, the good guys solve a case in 45 minutes. Okay, a 1 hour episode. So, right. But in reality, it could be 2, 3, 4 years before anything gets resolved. I was already transferred from. I had already transferred from Washington to Miami when the Lockerbie jet was blown up over Scotland, and that investigation lasted years. Okay, and you know what it came down to solving that case. it was a good crime scene effort by the Scotland Yard and the British police and the FBI. I don't know if people can see this. There was an item the size of my little fingernail right here, a
Wow.
little piece of evidence like that was located in an area of about 100 acres. Good work. A piece as tiny as my fingernail was recovered, and through painstaking work, somebody was able to link that little piece of evidence to a circuit board, and that circuit board was traced back to a certain model, and then that model was traced back to something else, and that's how they solved that case, through a tiny piece of a circuit board that was picked up, from a grassy knoll in Scotland, and that's what broke the case, and that linked it right back to a specific type of radio, of a specific type of a circuit board, and it was linked back to Libya. Okay, so and that's how they solved that case. It took several years, and it took like hundreds of police officers from the U.S., Scotland, and England, Brits, to solve that case. But unfortunately, I was already transferred to Miami by that time, so I didn't get to go. But I spoke to some colleagues of mine, and at the time, and I was jealous because some of those guys got to travel to Lockerbie for a year. They were away for a year TDY, and they said they had a great time. I'm thinking, well, but I was elsewhere doing other things, So.
Well, and as you mentioned earlier, we turn on the TV and it's breaking news, and
Right.
this airliner went down in Lockerbie, and you follow that for a while. Then all of a sudden, 10, 15, almost 20 years later, you say that little piece of evidence helped to solve the case, and now all of a sudden you realize that this quote unquote cold case,
Yeah.
somebody had been on it all of those years, and they
Yeah.
ended up solving it. And now, some 15, 20 years later, breaking news, the Lockerbie. So what we, normal everyday people don't realize is all of that painstaking investigation that goes on day after day, month and years at a time in order to solve some of these cases. And there are probably hundreds of them in the works all at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, like I said, it never stops, and, thank goodness, we are so lucky in the U.S., we have professional law enforcement agencies, federal, state, and local.
Right.
I remember, one of the things that I have to share with the audience, is when I was a young snot-nosed agent back in 1979, 80, at that time, the FBI laboratory was the laboratory in the country. Okay. And if it's one thing J. Edgar Hoover did right, it was that he wanted to have the best crime laboratory in the country. And for decades, that was true. And I remember in the 80s, a lot of local departments and even state departments, state agencies from various states would send critical evidence to the FBI lab. Those guys in the lab, I mean, they work 24/7, just about, different, murders, accidents, terrorism cases, all different types of stuff, So like I said, back in the day, the FBI lab was the lab, and now, thank God, our society and our budgeting has gotten to a point where almost I would be willing to say that every state in the country has a major lab in its state that can do the work that the FBI laboratory was doing 20 and 30 years ago. Because I'm telling you, back then, man, the FBI laboratory was just overworked. There was just so much evidence to examine. But see, now you've got 50 separate labs across the country that share the load. Okay, and the FBI can concentrate on international cases and on federal cases. So, but there are still some areas that are weak, like DNA testing. I'm told it's very expensive to do a DNA test. on stuff. It has to be a high priority, like a murder case or stuff like that. And unfortunately, I've heard some bad stuff, like rape cases. I've heard some state agencies have like a backlog of 2,000 or 3,000 rape incidents, and they haven't been able to test the DNA. And I'm thinking that is criminal. That is sinful. That agency or that state can't process those kits. Because rape is a violent personal crime. That's
Yes.
horrific. But anyway, we've gotten way tons better than we used to be back in the day. So.
But you folks, I want to invite you again to visit edmireles.com. It'll scroll across the screen several times during the show. You need to visit this website to see the areas of law enforcement that Ed has been in. You did 15 years or so in undercover work. And I have always been fascinated exactly what is undercover work. And after you explain what it is, I have a good follow-up question to you.
Well, you know what though? Gosh, I really don't know whether I have a textbook answer for undercover work. Undercover work is just conducting an investigation. You pose as a criminal, or you pose as a similar type person that's in an organization, or either a structured organization or a loose organization, or you purport to be something that someone's looking for. I was successful as an undercover agent for many reasons. I wish I could say that I was, a great investigator, but some of that was luck. But the other part of it is, is also my persona. I'm a Hispanic male, and I don't care what people say about profiling. Okay, a lot of drug dealers. Drugs come from South America, or the Middle East, or the Far East. There are certain type of ethnic groups that smuggle drugs. They control the drugs. Okay, like Latin America controls all the drugs coming in from to the U.S. Okay, so guess what? It's not profiling when you say, hey, Hispanic people are major. The majority of major drug dealers are Hispanics. Okay, so I'm Hispanic, so I was able to infiltrate people because I was easy. A leopard is a leopard. Okay, I pretended to be a leopard or a tiger. So I had the same coloring. So that helped a lot. Plus I spoke the language, and I had been around enough to know the terminology. The lingo. I wasn't. I try not to talk like a hood, you see all these movies on TV, like the Italian mafia, and hey, these, them, those, that's crazy.
Well,
you talk normal.
Sometimes though, didn't you have to use the street lingo in order to maintain your position as an undercover person?
Yeah, no, definitely. The thing is, you learn these things as you go along. Like as an undercover agent, normal people say, hey, go get the car, or go get the truck. You don't say, hey, go get the vehicle. No, no,
right.
Normal people don't use vehicle, So you try not to use obvious words like that. Yeah, go get the car, go get the truck. Oh yeah, my vehicle's over there. Let's go use my vehicle.
Yes,
stuff like that. You just learn these things.
So now having established that you were in undercover work, that leads to my follow-up question, and that is, how fearful during those years were you for your life, being being found out, being in a position where maybe somebody thought, wait a minute, I'm not sure if this guy's one of us or if he's with the law.
Mm-hmm.
How fearful was it from day to day for you and your associates to be doing this work and looking over your shoulder all of the time?
Well, I would be lying to you if I said that wasn't a concern, because it always is a concern. Let me give you an example. One time I was traveling to an airport. I don't even remember where, but a friend of mine, a fellow agent, happened to be in the same airport that I was walking in, and I was working undercover, and I had a beard, and I had, was dressed casual and stuff like that. And he said he saw me and recognized me, but he also said, "What the hell is Ed doing? Looking like that?" So he said, "Hey, I figured you were probably doing some undercover work, so I didn't approach you." So which is very smart on his end, because you don't. That was one of the biggest fear. People say, "Hey Ed, how's it going?" It's like you're having dinner with some killers. It's like, oh, that was always a concern. So, but it's an interesting question. Obviously, there is an apprehension level, there, but I mean, it wasn't. On a day-to-day basis, it wasn't on a level of terrified. It wasn't like at DEFCON 5 or whatever, DEFCON 1 or whatever. But there was a concern. I have to be honest with you. The biggest concern I had was when I was traveling overseas, working undercover, because I mean, you're out there. I think the CIA calls them knocks, not official covers or stuff like that. You were basically an FBI knock. You were just out there. I mean, people knew you were coming or going someplace, but there really wasn't anything they could do because I mean, you're on a flight by yourself. You get to the airport by yourself. You get to your hotel by yourself, and then they try to stay away from you. I mean, they'll give you the support that they can give you with pre-planning, but the rest of it. Has to be on your own. You've got to be pretty quick with your mind and stuff like that. Flexibility, I guess. One time I was overseas for 3 weeks, and it was pretty intense. I mean, I wasn't dealing with terrorists or bombers, but it was still a little bit tense. So. But by and large, as the more I did it, the more comfortable I became, and then I learned something, from the work. Undercover officers cannot be chasing criminals. Okay, if you chase after criminals, they get suspicious. Okay, so I kept telling our supervisors, the more I learned. I would tell them, say, hey, we need to have something that bad guys need. We need to offer them something they want, something they need.
Right.
And, obviously, the government can't be in the business of buying drugs, okay, because the more drugs we buy, the more drugs they bring, so it's a lose-lose. We spend, billions of dollars buying drugs, and they make billions of dollars, so we can't be in the business of buying drugs, but we would pose as buyers, like, hey, I want to buy 10 kilos or 100 kilos or whatever. But at some point in time, you would have to show them you had money, so the government doesn't like to buy drugs, so we ended up finding a real nice niche. We got into the transportation business. So it's like any other supply chain. You got a manufacturer or a producer, and you've got a buyer. Okay, and in between is transportation, housing, warehousing, whatever. So we got into the supply chain. The transportation side of it. So I ran a transportation company in Texas, and then I ran a transportation company in Arizona, and we were very successsul. People really thought we were the real deal. In Texas, it wasn't just me. It was me, and we had informants, and we had other support undercover agents, and we had a field office, providing top cover, Overwatch, on us and stuff like that. So it was a cast of hundreds, But in the course of 5 years, we must have seized like 4,000 or 5,000 kilos of cocaine, and hundreds of thousands of pounds of marijuana, and we actually made a profit from our escapades. We actually made a profit of over $1 million, $2 million in actual money that bad guys paid us for transporting, and in Arizona, I actually had a company there that we made $1 million. I mean, bad guy money, for our services. So basically the bad guys paid for the case. They paid for the investigation because the Department of Justice will allow us to use trafficker directed funds to further the case. In other words, the taxpayer isn't paying for an undercover warehouse, or the taxpayer is not paying for an undercover car. The bad guys are paying for all this stuff, So it was the best of both worlds, But eventually, after 15 years, you get beat down, you get tired, you get, it gets tiresome,
Well, also during your career, am I correct? You were involved in some deadly force confrontations, at least a couple of them, and you've been wounded in action a couple of times too. And was those occurrences the reason that you decided to author a book about your experiences?
Yeah. Actually, in my career, I was involved in 2 deadly force confrontations. One, the major event was I wrote a book called the FBI Miami Firefight. That happened when I was transferred
It's
from
on the
Washington.
website, folks. Visit the website because you can learn about the book too.
I was transferred from Washington to Miami in 1985. And the second incident was also in Miami in 1992. Now, one incident was a massive shootout. It was like involving 10 men. The one in 1986 was involving 10 men, 8 agents, and 2 bad guys. And the one in 92 was just a real small thing. It was my partner and a bad guy, and I didn't have a direct line of sight on the subject, so I didn't shoot. But it was still pretty intense. So. But in the original, my original gunfight, that was that was intense. I think intense is too mild of a word. We were involved in a 5-minute gunfight. 8 FBI agents and 2 bad guys. In that 5 minutes, there were 150 shots fired, back and forth in an area probably the size of I think most people can visualize a half court of basketball court, but half court. Okay, the half court.
Relatively small area.
It was real small, yeah. There were 10 men in that area, running and gunning and shooting and stuff like that. At the end of the day, out of the 10 participants, 9 of us were wounded. So that's a 90% hit rate. Okay, and then out of those 9, 4 individuals died. 2 FBI agents and the two bad guys. Special Agent Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove, my squad mates and friends, and unfortunately ended up dying on that day. But I took a couple of hits, which was never been shot before. But I would absolutely positively tell people not to get shot, because it's a very unpleasant, extremely unpleasant. So
I think that's good words of advice. Don't get shot.
Yeah, really.
And the way not to get shot is to be able to know what to do not to get shot.
Exactly.
Know how to cover your own butt.
I mean, first rule is don't rob banks. Second rule is don't sell drugs.
Yeah, and the third rule is don't get shot doing either one of them.
Yeah, really, exactly. So, yeah. But no, it was pretty intense. If I may, I was shot through this arm right here. I was the round hit me right here. Okay, and people say, it's just an arm wound. Yeah, well, I was shot with a rifle. Okay, and when the rifle round hit me here, it almost blew. I mean, it almost blew my arm totally off my body. The only thing that kept my arm attached was the flap of skin here on the interior of the arm. The rest of the arm just exploded. So
I have to ask you: were you married at the time?
Yes, I was married. Yeah, my wife was an FBI agent also. So she was, as luck would have it, she was like 2 miles south of the shooting incident, working when she heard the call for help. She goes, "What the heck is going on?" So, and then she after a couple of seconds, she looked at her partner. She goes, "Oh my God, that's Ed's squad." So she told him, "Hey, head to this address, or head in that direction." So she actually got to the scene. I had been loaded up. This is like after the incident. I had been loaded up into an ambulance, and the ambulance was leaving the scene, and she was coming into the scene. So we actually passed like this on the way, but she didn't know. She didn't know what was going on. So, but I mean, it's just one of those things. So, but you know what though, I do have some good news for your audience. So, all kidding aside, truly try not to get shot because it is unpleasant. But here's the good news. I've become a use of force instructor, deadly force, a street survival instructor, since 1988 after I recovered. And I've done a lot of research, a lot of interviews of law enforcement officers, military folks, and just regular old civilians, And there's a common thread involved in people that get massive trauma. Okay, like getting hit by a car or getting hit by a club or stabbed or shot. And the vast majority, 80 to 85% of people that are injured, they have told me that they felt no pain, and that validates what I went through, because when I was shot, a rifle round hit me right here, a .223 caliber rifle round hit me right here, and then a second rifle round hit me right here. So I mean, it just kind of hit my head back like this, but it was a grazing head wound, and it just went along the temple area. So I fell down not knowing what had happened. Okay, because when this thing hit me, the physiological trauma, I guess it's kind of like a large land mammal, like a deer. Anybody who's been hunting, you shoot a deer, sometimes they'll jump, they'll jerk. It's just a physiological reaction to the injury. And the same thing happened to me. It was a physiological reaction to the injury, but and I kind of jerked back and I fell on my back, but I did not feel any pain whatsoever for about 5 minutes, which I think helped a lot. It allowed me to continue to function. Okay, because eventually, I regrouped. I got I oriented again. I got my senses back and figured out what was going on, and then I was able to flank. I went around the side where the bad guys were trying to escape, and then I ended up shooting them, to prevent them from escaping.
Well,
But
and that curiosity about what it would be like being shot, all of a sudden that curiosity is gone, because now you know. I should tell the audience too that you received the 1986 National Police Officer of the Year award, which I again I say, you may say, oh, it's no big deal. That's a big deal. You also are the recipient of the U.S. Attorney General's Award for Exceptional Heroism, and there's that word, that H word, and also the FBI Medal of Valor. I mean, I know you are a humble man, Ed, but that all adds up to me to someone who has served us, citizens of the United States in the best way possible.
Well, I really appreciate that, Stuart. I really do. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it was what it was. But the thing is, I always want to make sure that I tell people. I said, hey, I was very lucky. Okay, extremely lucky. And
you had a job to do, and
I mean, there's training involved. There's tactics, but see that you can't. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 9:11. It says that the race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, and it goes on, and it says, but time and chance happen to us all, and that's a fancy way of saying luck. Okay, I was very lucky.
Right.
time
Well,
and chance. I mean, because look at this. I mean, the round hit me here. I'm running. My arms are moving. I'm running. I'm weaving back and forth. I couldn't duplicate this again. And if you tried a million times, because I mean, a million times it's going to miss and hit me in the chest.
well,
Okay, or hit me in the face. So time and chance. But and I'm very appreciative, and I acknowledge how lucky I am. I mean, I had training, and I had motivation, being in the Marines and stuff like that. But when it's all said and done, Stuart, I just showed up. Okay, the real hero.
You had a job to do, and you did it. And you not only talk the talk, but you walk the walk. And
Yeah.
I can't even begin to thank you for taking the time to be a guest on the show and sharing your experiences.
Well,
I am very, very proud to know you. I'm very proud that you have done for our country what you were trained to do. You and the other people that you served with. And also, again, I thank you very, very much for taking the time to be a guest on the show.
Well, Stuart, I thank you for asking. I really do, and I always, try to take advantage of it. Make sure that the people know that there was a lot of us out there, and a couple of us made the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
Ben Grogan and Jerry Dove. Thank you.
Well, that'll do it for another episode of Someone You Should Know. I always end my show by saying, be yourself, because everyone else is already taken. And again, thank you. Make it a great day. Go out, have a good one. And again, another thank you to my very special guest, Ed Mireles. Thank you very, very much. Take care.
Someone you should know.